All right, Niles, you're live. I'm live. We're all live. Cool.
Yep, came through. Cool.
Fantastic. We'll let Paul share real quick before we get started so he can have that running live on his feed. And yeah, we'll dive in.
You said we're live. I thought we were live.
We were live.
Really live.
Man, I'm just dipping my toe, it feels like, into the crazy world that streaming live has become since I was an enthusiast 5 years ago. Like, the world's just changed. I used to remember when I had like this cheap little webcam and I just go live on YouTube, and I thought I was, or when that was even YouTube, it was Twitch. It was back when Twitch was a relatively new thing. I thought I was the coolest thing in the world. And now everyone from young kids to my grandpa does it. And I'm like, it's a whole new world, brave new world.
Yeah, all this is live though.
Yeah, it's true. Let's talk about my grandpa more live. Let's go ahead. He's got. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, all right. Well, hey, thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Logan Edmonds of Tabernacle Technology Solutions. Why don't you two go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'm Niles Bengaza with TechStop in Prescott, Arizona.
And Paul Mancuso with Vital Integrators in Lafayette, Louisiana.
And just to clarify, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. These guys were smarter than me on this one. Cool. Something big happened this week. And we were going to give the TLDR version of it, not get too technical. Paul, you and I were chatting about this. Do you want to, Huntress, which is a pretty well-known cybersecurity group, very well respected in our industry, they dropped a big, what's called a zero-day exploit. You want to kind of give the TLDR on what's going on there?
We did. And so basically I guess it's a zero-day exploit that they found. And if people don't understand what that is, it means this is a brand new exploit. It's a brand new thing that has been found in the wild that is able to be taken advantage of that hackers are using. So it's called Follina, I guess is the name they coined it. I don't know who came up with that name, but I don't think it was Huntress, but somebody did. And basically, layman's terms, very basic, it is exploiting Office products that are attachments to email. That's basically the gist of it. Obviously, there's a lot more technical involved in that, but from the end user, you really just want to be making sure that you're knowing what you're opening, who you're opening it from. But even in this exploit, that's not even always safe.
Yeah, I mean, who Microsoft Office, it doesn't get much more basic than that. Like, we all use Office, or maybe unless you're a Google snob, you might use Google Docs, but still. Niles, you want to go ahead and kind of talk why this is kind of what's the big hang up here? Like, why is it such a big deal compared to normal? Because we hear about tech drops all the time about, oh, this thing's been unpatched, this vulnerability. Why is this one different?
Well, at least from my perspective, this one is a lot easier for the cyber criminals to actually exploit. The traditional protections, such as Microsoft's preview mode, or when you open a document, it says allow editing. Like, that's a security feature that doesn't protect you in this case. So I think it's just way easier for hackers to get it out there. And unless you have multi-layered security, like we have been telling you for a decade, unless you have that in place, it's a big threat.
I mean, my security stack's pretty deep, and we were messaging about this, and I realized this like bypasses like 3 out of my 4 layers. I got one layer that actually works against this thing, and I was like going through with you guys like, I think this works, and I had to do a little bit of research, and it's the layer that we're using. It's pretty relatively new, I'd say, with the whole zero trust thing. So, I mean, yep. I think last I checked, and I'm not, don't quote this on me on this, I was reading there was some kind of workaround mitigation from Microsoft, but it's cumbersome. It's not easy to do. It's got to be done on a per machine basis. So this is still a pretty big deal in that you literally can't trust Word documents right now. Like, period. Like, you can't. Yep. That's what this means, is it's easy to use, and you can't trust Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, PowerPoints. If you open them on your machine, unless you have very specific certain kinds of security installed, you're running a risk every single time that someone's just going to get full-blown access to everything.
And it's not like this is a new tactic, right? I mean, now in the past, it's mostly been, it's got a macro embedded in an Excel spreadsheet. You have to do multiple steps that most other things would catch. And this is just dangerous because it could be really attached to any file that is sent through email, and it's legitimately exploiting an Office plugin. I mean, an Office program.
Yeah.
And so even if it's, if someone that you do know, say they get infected and it sends to you, you're more likely to open that file, which is what's probably the most dangerous part about all this.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do we get emails where it's like, hey, so and so who you trust, even though it's like one letter off in the domain or something like that, like someone you expect, here, take a look at this Word document. Like it's very low hanging fruit. It doesn't take a lot of mental gymnastics to get that trick across the finish line for most average people.
And I don't know if y'all have noticed this, actually, but before this was actually released, we personally across our customer base have seen an uptick in exactly what you just said, like domain names that are one letter off and things like that. That we're seeing those exploits we saw kind of an influx of that, and then this was released. So I'm curious if those might be related to each other in a way that the attackers are, preparing, and they were actually exploiting this, and that's how it was actually found out. And that's maybe why they were doing it.
Yeah. Niles, real quick, you know this, I know you do. You want to sum up what a 0-day exactly is?
Yeah.
I throw that term around a lot here, and it's actually a pretty simple term, but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you've probably seen it in headlines and stuff, but so 0-day vulnerabilities, it's just an attack that's discovered that doesn't have a fix yet. It's an active known vulnerability. And 0-day as to say, we're day zero, just found out about this. This is hot off the press, so to speak.
Well, and to be clear, we're all finding out about it, but obviously the hackers, we don't know necessarily how long they've known about it.
I was a lot of. Go ahead. Sorry. Okay, I was going to say, a lot of 0 days they find out and they're like, oh, this has been a vulnerability for 5 years, 10 years.
I mean, I was just reading an article, and I think I forwarded it to you guys. Like, there's evidence, and it's being investigated, that Chinese-backed what we call advanced persistent threats, or hacking groups that are state-sponsored or state-affiliated, at least. There's evidence they're already using this. Like, they are full-blown using this to get access that they couldn't get previously. Because it is, I'd say, for a trick, like, because we talk a lot about a term called social engineering. And social engineering just means, it's scam artistry, right? It's refined scamming. That's what social engineering is in a nutshell. This doesn't require a whole lot of, prep work to actually get it across the finish line to get someone to trust you. I mean, it's literally, how many times have you, thinking that, because I know Word has protected view. I've opened a doc once or twice that, I look at it and go, oh, that's probably not okay. Don't take it out of protected view. This particular thing basically means if I open any kind of Word doc that has any of this stuff in it, it doesn't matter if it's a protected view or not. It's just going to go right from my machine and start rifling. I mean, it gives someone, China, Russia, wherever, full access to all the stuff I have on my computer.
And I think that's what's great about working with some of the vendors that we work with, Hunters being one of them, is they're actually deconstructing this actively right now. They're actively doing this live, almost blogging about it in real time, almost figuring out what it actually is doing. And that's what's it's cool to see that side of it. And it's also very very important that you are working with vendors like that too. I mean, I know you've got a bunch, like you said, four different methods you're using, and only one of them caught it, right? And that is the precise reason we try to have as much layered security as possible.
I like how Huntress describes it, because they know their audience so well. It's like they give this big technical write-up, and then they say, for those of us who are technical, okay, you gotta go explain this to normal people. Here's a TLDR, it's full bullet points, and it's just really quick. And I'm like, thanks, Huntress, because they know the big tech galaxy brain people are like, oh, we want to go talk about the tech. And for normal people, like, that's not the takeaway here. The takeaway is it just got a lot easier for someone to detonate remote commands on your computer. So that's how ransomware gets started, for example. That's exactly, like, in a nutshell. That's textbook 101. Someone manages to run a command on your computer somehow, you get ransomware. So I could see this being used heavily in that specific arena.
And you would hope that with these 0-day exploits that happen, that these companies and these vendors, try to work together to stop this. Especially like with Microsoft, like how quickly are they going to come up with a solution? with a patch. That's all part of your security posture, is making sure you're like, so when Microsoft does release an update, are you actually installing that update? Are your computers going to actually get that update there? And I think that's just as important as making sure things are staying up to date.
Now, you've been quiet. You want to chime
Yeah,
in?
well, yeah. So I had a thought because I thought it's funny that these zero-day threats come out, and obviously it's a big deal. We don't want to disregard them, but when you have multiple layers already in place, where we're monitoring our clients' environments, we're making sure updates are on there. We're sweeping their environment on a regular basis to make sure good security practices are in place. With this particular vulnerability, their recommended fix is something that we've already been assessing for a few months, as far as not allowing Microsoft Office to create child processes. And it's something Microsoft has recommended, unless you actually need that feature, that you should disable it. They've been recommending that for years.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Like, I'm pretty involved in this stuff. I don't know about you guys, obviously, you know what I do for a living. And sometimes like it can, there's so much from a deluge from these big companies on all the various things you should do. It can be very hard to filter that down to an actionable plan. Like there are literally vendors whose entire product is filtering all this general information we get from these big companies like Microsoft and making like a brief, here's your action plan. And that's all they do. And they make buku bucks because of that. Like, so I can understand like the average person, even if they have like peripheral knowledge of this kind of stuff, how are you even supposed to go about starting to address that? And that's, like Paul mentioned earlier, kind of where we come in as partners. Like, yeah, you're right. This is stupid technical. This is kind of convoluted. You kind of need someone with a dedicated hand, or not kind of, you do need someone more often than not, the dedicated hand to kind of plan this out and figure out how do we mitigate these kind of things.
I like how Huntress described it too, when they can elevate their privileges and potentially gain godlike access to the affected environment.
I mean, you don't think about it, but like godlike access means they can see your screen.
Do everything.
Start there. Like you could read your email. There you go. They can read your email. They can remotely access your computer. Or, even worse, do things like keyloggers where it takes screenshots all day long of your computers, and they can just go rifling through those screenshots, see what you've been working on, what cloud applications you've been using. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So this is obviously not a one-off thing. Like, this is the big headline right here, but 0 days are happening all the time. So maybe we should talk about, general practices other than reaching out to someone like us. What can you do to minimize a threat? And I'll start with
your computer.
Yeah, that's true. Throw your computer out the window. No, I'd say simplify. Keep your footprint as minimal as possible when it comes to the kind of stuff you use. I know a lot of people let their employees install whatever they want on their computers and, use all these third-party programs. Some people using, like, for example, Dropbox, and others will use Google Drive, and, some people use Adobe, and some people use there's lists. Like, you need to standardize a little bit, because the more stuff you have going on, the bigger the attack surface, what we call, the more opportunities something can go wrong.
Yeah. I think too, though, it also goes back to common sense to some degree. Obviously you're not going to catch everything, but even, and I'm sure you guys have the same thing, where you get busy, you start doing things, it's very simple to just open an email from somebody that you interact with on a daily basis that you don't know if they were hacked or not, right? So you really have to start being very careful, because if it is something where it's like one letter off, but they've copied their signature and everything looks the exact same, it is very possible for you to just assume that is accurate, and you open the file. Again, not because you did anything intentionally, it's just not paying attention. And I think that's one of the biggest ways you can mitigate it. Because like you said, you're not going to stop everything. And even with these attacks, it's the one thing we see. We're seeing this today, but tomorrow it's going to be something else. The next day it's going to be something else. It's not like these things go away.
I'd say it starts with acknowledging that this is a problem. I mean, this is a cybercrime, cyber attacks. That's a problem that faces every one of our businesses. So taking it seriously and saying, okay, I'm going to start securing my business, that's a critical step.
Yeah, I use the term minimize or mitigate, because we're not going to, like, 100% protection, 100% prevention, I should say. It's not viable. It's like trying to go out and say, I'm going to stop every car crash in the country in one fell swoop. It doesn't happen. But there's a big difference between saying I'm going to stop every car crash in the country and how do we mitigate so that, we prevent the amount of frequency it's happening. And when it does happen, we minimize the damage. That's kind of the model that it's not kind of, it is the model that cybersecurity as an industry has adopted now at this point. Because the honest truth is there's no way to 100% stop this. It's just all about minimizing risk now.
Yep. I think that risk conversation is what everybody has to decide what their risk tolerance is. And it's almost like insurance in a way.
Yeah.
Because you don't need it until you need it. But man, if you don't have it, you wish you would have. And like, God, I wish I would have put these things in place. And that's what you really are left with in the event of a breach, right? Or a hack. And I think that's part of what our job is, educating the business owner about why it's a risk to their business, and how to limit that risk, because there are ways to limit it.
Absolutely.
There's not a way to prevent it. And I think that's it used to be prevention was kind of, I'm going to throw back, 10, 15 years when Macs can't get viruses. That was the big selling point of why a lot of people wanted to go with Macs. Now, anybody in the industry realized that's not true, but that was, they were actually marketing it that way for a while. And it's like, now even Macs are able to get these things.
Oh yeah, to clarify, Macs are just as easy to infect now as Windows devices from a what do you call it? From a third-party neutral standpoint. It's apples to apples at this point.
And Apple does probably a better job than Android, but I think the next big wave we're going to see is phones.
Oh, phones. I think it's already here. I think that's the problem. Like that. The world, people don't have trouble sometimes. And I was having this conversation with my wife, and to be clear, my wife is not a techie person. She's a teacher. So so we're talking about these, kids now with fleets of Chromebooks, and, people don't realize this, but about 10 years ago, we as a planet, I'd say everyone first world countries made this decision to tie our physical realities to our digital identities. How often do you handle all the money in your bank account anymore? You don't. It's just a number on a screen. But people sometimes still have this disconnect that my digital life is separate from my physical life, and that one can't affect the other, which we all know is not true. I've been involved in situations where the digital stuff absolutely affects the bottom line for the business, for the individual. It's got costs. So taking this, however you address it, but taking a proactive measure is only going to benefit you. Going forward and being proactive about it is only going to bring a boon. Choosing to bury your head in the sand, it's not going to get better, at least not for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I like the analogy I use is wearing your seatbelt. You could go ahead and just not wear your seatbelt and maybe you'll be fine. But is that a risk that you want to accept? Or would you rather put it on? If you get in a car crash, at least you're not going to be nearly as hurt. Same thing with cybersecurity.
Analogy, it's like, okay, you get in a wreck, then you're going to put your seatbelt on? That's kind of the thing. Like,
I like it even better. Like, you get in a wreck and you expect your insurance, and then you want your insurance to come and stop you from getting in a wreck. It doesn't work that way. Like, I like that analogy better. Like that's, you got a preventative measures, guys. That's all it's all about. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up on this topic. What do you guys think?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, let's do, for those of you who didn't join us at the beginning of the stream, let's do another round of introductions and we'll close out. I'm Logan Edmonds. I'm with Tabernacle Technology Solutions. We are based in the heart of Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
Niles Banghauser with TechStop in Prescott, Arizona.
And Paul Mancuso with Vital Integrators in Lafayette, Louisiana. So we are all spread out.
You got a great geographical variety here. All right, guys. Have a great week. See you all later.